Hello, everybody. Hello, Mike. Thank you so much for joining us here at Screentime. This is all very exciting. Exciting day for you guys, you and your new-ish game studio, Dreamhaven. You guys just announced a new game.
We did, yeah. This is the first time we've been able to talk about the stuff we've been working on internally.
How long have you been working on this one now?
This one about 4 years.
4 years in the making. And do you want to tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, so this one is a little bit different. It's called Sunderfolk. It's really inspired by Secret Door's love for tabletop games and tabletop RPGs in particular. And so, you know, when you think about gathering around with your friends and the feeling of togetherness you have around the board game table, that's something we kind of wanted to capture in this world where we're all kind of disconnected and, you know, separated by virtual wires and all that stuff. We wanted to give people a way to gather in their living room and kind of reimagine game night. Also, when you think about these games, a lot of them come with thick manuals and a lot of setup time that kind of really is a barrier to entry for a lot of people, you know, including ourselves, because it really takes a lot of time to do that. And
2 hours setup, yep.
Also self-select out from a lot of our friends and family that we just know don't have the patience for that sort of thing. But there's really a magic that these types of games have. And so we wanted to use technology, the personal screen that we all have in our pockets, and a main shared screen that can kind of act as the shared, the board or the table. And, so I think we've hit on something that's kind of a really nice, easy way to ease people into this type of game and maybe even give tools to lovers of this genre to be able to share it with people that wouldn't ordinarily be able to.
So I want to zoom out for a second, Mike. So for people who don't know you, you are, of course, the co-founder and former CEO of Blizzard Entertainment, which I'm sure that many people in this room have heard of. Blizzard is, of course, the company behind Warcraft and Diablo and StarCraft and Overwatch. You can just kind of go on and on, rattling off these billion-dollar franchises. You left in 2018 and started Dreamhaven, your new company, in 2020. And I think one of the secrets to Blizzard's success was always being able to take a genre of a video game that kind of seems a little bit maybe unapproachable, a little bit too hardcore, and make it broadly appealing to everybody. For example, with World of Warcraft, take a game like EverQuest, which was very popular back in the day, but also a little hard to get into, a little difficult. Make World of Warcraft out of it, a game that is way more accessible and approachable. It sounds like you guys are trying to take that same philosophy and do that in kind of the modern era.
Yeah, I think you know, we try to look for things that have potential to be deep and replayable, and you know, in the case of Dreamhaven, we're really trying to create experiences that can connect people in positive ways.
So what I think maybe some of the folks from the Hollywood scene might know or not know is that the climate in the video game industry right now is a little bit bleak. There have been thousands and thousands of layoffs in the video game industry. I mean, it's kind of like, it's funny, when I had breakfast with some Hollywood colleagues a few months ago, they all said, we're all saying survive till 25. And I said, that's what the video game industry is saying. Everybody's just trying to survive till 25. So you guys are announcing this game in the midst of kind of what has been a real industry, I don't know if crisis is the right word, but certainly a tough climate. What is it like? How do you kind of, well, I guess first and foremost, what is it like for you guys? What has it been like for Dreamhaven operating a startup in this environment?
Well, you know, we're in an environment, we don't have any games in the market, we don't have any customers yet, so we haven't experienced a downturn ourselves.
Yeah.
I would say just the gaming downturn even is a little bit overstated, because if you look at the gaming industry in general, it actually is still growing. More people are playing games than ever before. But I think the situation is what you had is going through the pandemic, you know, people didn't have a lot to do, and so they turned to the streaming platforms and they turned to games, and it was a huge increase in usage. And a lot of the companies saw that, and they thought that was the new trend, and that was just going to continue. And so there was a lot of investment And when that didn't continue, I think probably the finance department said, oh, wait a minute, margins and everything. And so they wanted to sort of cut back to the trend line. It's been really sad to see. It's affected a lot of people. It's not a great, efficient way to grow.
Yeah, 100%. And the correction, I think that's definitely true, but that's also part of the story. The other part of the story is oversaturation, which is that the video game market, just like the Hollywood market, is just filled with stuff. There is so much more stuff coming out now than there was when you guys were starting Blizzard, as an example, in the 1990s. It was a lot easier to break out if you had something really great. And your philosophy of Blizzard was always make great games and the profits will follow. But is that still true today? Can you still stand out in this market?
Well, I mean, gaming has always been very competitive, and really the top games have been responsible for the vast majority of the profits. So in order to really, be a hit, you have to stand out and be one of the top games. So that part is the same. You're right, though. The amount of competition is higher. There's a stat that I looked at recently. Something like 15,000 games are released each year on Steam.
Oh, my God.
And that's just, the PC platform. Then you look at the other platforms, and of course, it's a lot higher than that.
Yeah.
And so how do you get noticed and stand apart from the other games? And our strategy really is to make sure that when we're pursuing a game, that we're adding something to the genre that differentiates our game. We're trying to elevate the genre. We're not trying to copy something that's already there just because it's successful. We're looking at opportunities that haven't necessarily been explored, or maybe there's some gap in the market that we feel like as gamers is something we want to see.
Yeah, so 15,000 games coming out on Steam per year. What do you think that number was in 1994 when you guys released Warcraft?
It was 0 because there was no Steam.
What do you think the number of new games per year coming out?
That's a good question. I mean, I have no.
So probably more
idea.
more like dozens than, or maybe 100
per year.
So.
It's probably in the hundreds.
In the hundreds,
but,
yeah.
But you really needed to hit the top 10.
Yeah, to stand out and become a breakout hit. So with this new game, Thunderfolk, it seems like you're taking that kind of like, we're going to take tabletop games, do our spin on that, make them more approachable, make them more accessible. Is your hope that, do you think there's a big market for people who are going to play this kind of game?
Well, we certainly hope so. I mean, one of the things, you've seen a rise in popularity of role-playing games in general. D&D has become very popular. Things like Critical Role has been like the #1 earning channel on Twitch, which is amazing to see. And they're selling out arenas, with people going to watch live D&D. But I think it's still has a barrier to entry. You need to have a DM. There's a lot of rules to learn and a lot of setup to kind of get into that. It's intimidating for a lot of people. And so we're hoping this can kind of be a gateway game for people.
Yeah, I think so. I played it. I got to come to your office yesterday afternoon, and I played a bunch, and it's a lot of fun. I will say I enjoyed it. I want to play more. Although the one hesitation I had, or I guess the one barrier that I see, is this idea of, so the way it works is you are controlling the character on your phone while playing it on a TV. It seems like it might be the type of thing that like your average gamer might look at that and be like, oh, I don't want to pick up my phone. Is this a phone game? Like, what is this?
Yeah, it's not a phone game. It's really trying to take all of the stuff that is in your hand, or that you're controlling on the board, and put that in a easy to manage way on your phone. So all the counters, all the cards, and stuff like that. So you're able to control things. I think it is one of those things that when we've gotten people to sit down and hold the phone in their hand and actually interact with the game, there's a lot of, oh, I see what you guys are doing. This feels really good, But I don't know how much that comes through if you're just watching the trailer.
Yeah. I recommend it from what I've played so far. I'm excited about it. I'm excited to play more. I want to talk a little bit about Dreamhaven, about the company you guys are building, because you guys have been at it for about 4 years now, after many, many years running Blizzard. I guess first and foremost, are there kind of, what would you say are kind of the biggest lessons that you've taken away from your time at Blizzard that like you can use to springboard this opportunity to start new new and start a brand new company?
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the philosophies we definitely want to bring forward to Dreamhaven is really, you know, we think we're going to succeed if the quality of our games is there, and we want to always kind of be iterating, playing the games, making sure that we're making the best games possible, that we're serving a need for players. I think that's a critical success factor. We're trying to create an environment at Dreamhaven for our studios to feel like they're in control of their destiny, so they have agency, they're excited about the games that they're making, and they can fix things when they're not working. You know, we want the people that are contributing to these games to feel like they can do their best work at Dreamhaven.
Yeah.
You know, and we're building a company where people really care about the experience our players have. They're trying to do something very special. Everybody's very excited and motivated, and so I think that's all really important. People talk a lot about, you know, player over profit or things like that, but the way we think about it is the quality of the games and attracting players is the path to profit. They're not like, it's not a contradictory thing. The strategy is doing the right thing for players, and for the games is the strategy to get to the profit.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that, you know, another thing that's very important in, you know, building a healthy culture, having a safe and inclusive work environment for people. And one of the things we've really been working hard at is right from the beginning to let people know the kind of environment that we're trying to create, and making it very safe and inviting for people to speak up if they think that we're not achieving that, or they think that things can be better, so that we hear about these things early and often. We're talking about them. I think that it's pretty standard at really any company. There's going to be a whisper network, you know, when there's stuff that sort of doesn't seem right, and people will be talking about that stuff. And the key thing is for basically to be able to hear the whispers, you know. And I think so far I'm happy with how things are going. I feel like we are hearing the whispers, and we're following up on those things, and we're creating an environment where people feel comfortable going, you know, and raising issues and talking about issues.
Yeah. Yeah, something that I think is worth noting is that at Blizzard, at the very beginning, it was almost entirely men. A little later on, it was closer to 20-ish% women. At Dreamhaven, the number's a lot higher, right?
Yeah, we're about 37% women and non-binary, so we're pretty
above
happy
average
with that.
for the video game
It is,
industry.
yeah.
Yeah, and then the other kind of part of this equation is we've reported at Bloomberg. I reported in my new book, Play Nice, about the kind of the corporate pressures that Blizzard became under, especially towards the later years of your tenure there. Yeah. Something I think is pretty wild is that you sold Blizzard in 1994, 3 years into its existence. Now we're 4 years into Dreamhaven, and you still own it. Is that something you see? Do you see yourself just kind of retaining control this time around?
Well, I don't have any desire to give up control. You know, I think we'll have to play that by ear. But right now, our focus is on these first two games that we're developing. So we're talking about the Secret Door game. We also have another studio called Moonshot that's also working on a really fun game. It's very different from this one. We are planning to publish our own games, the ones that we're developing, and also be able to publish some external games as well. And we announced the first game that we're publishing, developed by an external studio. It's called Linked, Banner of the Spark, from a great developer called FuzzyBot. And that one is actually already up on Steam. You can download a demo of it, and it's going live in early access on October 22nd. But you can wishlist it today. Anything
you can share about that other game in development at Moonshot? Anything you can kind of tease out for us?
So I think the thing that all of these games have in common is our desire to create experiences that you can share with your friends and really bring people together in positive ways. The other one is not a couch co-op game, but you can still enjoy it with your friends. We just had an internal sort of friends and family alpha test of the game, and I had a blast playing it with my family. my daughter loved it as well. So that's a good sign.
Yeah, it seems like playtesting is a big part of the philosophy of Dreamhaven. I know that was a big part of what made Blizzard so successful, getting everyone constantly playing the game, which is something I'm always shocked when I hear that at some game studios, they don't actually do that.
Yeah, and one of the things we like to do is constantly open up the groups of people and look to larger and larger groups of people, so you're always getting a fresh perspective. People who have never played the game, so they're not along the journey with us. They don't know why we made certain changes or how things are supposed to be. And then you can kind of always see, like, what is that on-ramp to understanding the game?
We got a couple of viewer questions that I think maybe we can field. Maybe we can field a couple of these. One person asks, how is AI going to change games? How is Dreamhaven thinking about AI? And I assume the implication here is generative AI, the new kind of LLMs that are being discussed.
Yeah, so I mean, we've been blown away at the progress of generative AIs. We aren't yet sure how to leverage that for actual game development or gameplay. I think you can imagine that it could have a huge impact. I think AI is going to have an impact on all sorts of aspects of our lives and how we interact with each other. We're using it for ChatGPT is a great sounding board for a lot of things, and so we're starting to use it for that. Obviously, note taking and meetings and things like that. These games that we're developing are far enough along that there's really not a big opportunity, but it's something that we're paying a lot of attention to. I think we're also aware that there are big challenges as well.
Yeah.
In our industry and other creative industries, because we have to figure out the copyright, the legal issues, ethical issues, and things like that, which, I'm hoping will be solved over time.
Yeah. So do you envision, I've thought about this a lot, do you envision it as more something like ChatGPT or generative AI, do you envision it as more helping for the creation of the game or like possibilities inside a game itself?
I think both, probably. I think as in terms of making creators more efficient, we're seeing some amazing things that Copilot is able to do with software engineering. So I do think that there are opportunities there.
Yeah, it's interesting.
There's some amazing art tools as well.
Yeah.
But I think you really need to be able to put these tools in the hands of talented individuals to really get the benefit.
Yeah, I mean, some of the art that you see floating around on social media is just total slop. So yeah, I mean, definitely need some real people in there, some human talent in there too. Yeah, we can take one more question probably from the audience. How does a young person start a career in gaming today? I think that's an interesting question because you came up at a time when like people didn't even know there was such thing as a career in gaming.
Yeah.
What's changed between now and then?
I mean, so much. One of the big things is that there are very good game engines that everyone really has access to. Unity and Unreal are very popular.
Tools for making games.
But these are like engines that your game can actually run on. And so I know there are a lot of high school students and college students that are actually using these tools to make their own games. And so I think if people are interested in game development, I'd really encourage people to start learning about programming, because that opens up all sorts of avenues for you to implement these things and experiment yourself. And I think it also, even if you ultimately want to go into other fields like art or design, having an understanding of programming and how it all comes together, I think can help make you a more well-rounded game maker.
And what do you guys typically look for? Like if you find a young person and they want to come work for Dreamhaven, is it programming skills?
It's really everything. We do, we also, we're not doing it this year, but we have done an internship program where we've brought in college students during the summer. And, we've done it with art, with programming, even project management, things like that.